People, Deluded, I'm back again. A couple of things here to sit here and speak about with it. Obviously, football being at a standstill. The first is obviously Jack Grealish is going to get himself in hot water if he hasn't. Apparently, Aston Villa have been trying to contact him to no avail at the time of making this vid. If you don't know, long story short, allegedly he was at an ex-teammate's house, believed to be Ross McCormack's flat. Long story short, he crashed his 70k worth Land Rover into some parked cars. Allegedly, witnesses said him and a couple others looked highly intoxicated. Obviously, with having to stay away from people and stay in your house, I don't need to spell how silly this sounds. And also, obviously, considering this man made a video urging people to stay at home, it doesn't look good. And it is, I'm not saying, listen, this doesn't happen to Jack Grealish week in, week out, but if you type in his name, there are a couple of incidences like this. We all know isolation can be difficult. He's a lad. He's a relatively young footballer. There's all devices, but it's nothing to do with, in my opinion, yeah, you have a responsibility and a code of conduct and all of these sort of things. It's just about not being an effing idiot, really. You know you shouldn't be out drinking. You know you shouldn't potentially be driving cars. You know you've just made a video or whatever and this is going to come out. Why do it to yourselves? And again, I don't think this has any relevance to getting called up by England, but for a relatively good season by Jack Grealish, where he's been linked with bigger clubs and Southgate, potentially could call him up. He's unlucky of what happened to the Euros being postponed. You don't need that, because imagine it was the Euros in a week's time or so. These sort of things will turn people off, because he might, again, I'm not saying he isn't, because you need to remember Jack Grealish is a captain, and that's even more reason he should lead by example on and off the field. Southgate might just say, you know what, it's too much problems. I'm going to go with Mount and Maddison because I know they're not going to do anything. Ironically, Mason Mount, he got in trouble for chilling with Rice after being given orders by Chelsea. But, going against their orders to do a kickabout and play football, to crashing into parked cars and having odd sandals on, are two completely different things, people. He's got a lot of potential, but he needs to fix up, man. It's just, it's nonsense from him. I'm all sure you've seen Aubameyang's comments with Kevin's Prince Boateng in relation to Arsenal. There isn't much in it. He just played coy on his future. But I'm all sure you've seen Harry Kane. Now, Harry Kane's got a lot to think about. Now, he didn't say he's going to leave Spurs tomorrow. He just simply said, not even that I'd be open. He's like, I would consider moving. And what could you expect him to do? He's a quality striker, has shown it for a number of years, leads the line for club and country, leads it well, always bringing 20 minimum league goals and plus. 26 years of age, he wants trophies. He's seen this Spurs team, when Poch was there, developed for 3 to 5 years, didn't win anything. For me as an Arsenal fan, it's amazing. Spurs' golden era, not anything to show with it. And it looks like football has ended, nothing to show with it. But on a serious note, he's got a lot to think about. Again, when you're looking at it, other players might have moved for money, but players potentially at Spurs are not on the biggest of contracts, and there's not really the sporting thing. So when you're the Roses and the Ericssons, and again Rose fell off, but you're looking at it like, is there a point to be here? Can I earn better wages or more chance of trophies elsewhere? Like you saw with Walker keeping it moving. And Kane's got a lot to decide, I'd say potentially within the next 18 months to 2 seasons, because by 28, it'd be a great shape. Well, not really, but I'm sure Spurs fans wouldn't, but with where they're going to be, because you'd imagine it's going to take Spurs anything from 1 to 4 years to get a competitive side again, trying to win the league. They've got some good players there. Whether Jose can do that, there's a lot of work to be done in that side. And Kane's still got time on his hands, and he'd only be 30 in the next 4 years. But at the end of the day, he's 26. The only stumbling block I can see is Kane's costing 100+ million, whether you believe he's worth it or not. The fee might go down if he goes to a Madrid or one of these foreign teams, but to go to a rival, you're looking probably at 100 plus, maybe something dumb to go to the Uniteds and Cities. They're the only ones I see able to afford him. I'm sure Chelsea could rub their pennies together and find the money, but would he join Chelsea? I don't think so. Plus, Levy is a dangerous man to negotiate with. Apparently, once upon a time, Kane, and he probably still is, but Kane was on a shortlist from United to look at people, but they didn't pursue it purely because Daniel Levy is a terror to work with, and that encourages Spurs fans, and I wish Arsenal would do that. You hear the Berbatov move was a very dragged out process, but Kane has a lot to think about, people. I'm sure he loves Spurs. I'm sure you love Arsenal more after them pictures, mate. But he has to, man, because at the end of the day, a career is short. Do you want to, he faces the prospect of almost, being one of the best strikers not to win anything in England, really. Like, he might win something, but yeah, he's good enough to go out elsewhere, people. And, you know, it would be a problem for Spurs because I think to leave Spurs, he'd have to really dig his heels in unless Spurs wanted to sell him. Really dig his heels in and say, I want to keep it moving because he's not going to cost cheap. And, you know, if I was United or City and Kane is going to cost a shitload, I'd think with someone like Levy, to make it easier, you need to come out and drag your heels and say you're leaving sort of thing, people. So I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. But he said a lot more, people, but the bulk of it is, it's one of those things I couldn't say yes, I couldn't say no. I love Spurs, I'll always love Spurs, but it's one of those things I've always said, if I don't feel we're progressing as a team or going in the right direction, then I'm not someone who's just going to sit here for the sake of it. So if to come out and Kane, I haven't seen Kane say anything. I've heard him say he's ambitious, but I haven't seen him say that in public, stuff like this in public. What are they saying in private? What have they been saying for years in private at many teams, not just Spurs, but you get it. Because, you know, Rose didn't just come out Rose gets himself in trouble being outspoken, but he didn't just come out the blue with things. You know, there's other people doing the same. And you look at Eriksen must have thought, oh, you know what, not going to win trophies, let me go and try a new experience and get paid, really and truly. And other people probably thought of that as well. And, you know, he'll always love Spurs. It's his club. They've given him a chance. He's gone down in Spurs folklore, not for winning anything, but, you know, highlighted scoring all them goals against Arsenal. Spurs fans, I've got to dig you lot with this, man. But yeah, man, you can't begrudge him. You can't begrudge him. I just don't see it happening because I'm sure he's recently signed a new deal. He's going to cost a shitloads of money. Daniel Levy is not going to make it easy. So he can move. It's very feasible to imagine he moves. I mean, if Sergio left, you know, if Sergio Aguero left City, I'm sure City have a number of targets and Kane might be one of them. You know, and he said, I'm an ambitious player. I want to improve. I want to get better. I want to become one of the top players. It all depends on what happens as a team and how we progress as a team. So it's not a definite, I'm going to stay here forever, but it's not a no either. So he's open to anything, provided his ambition is matched. He believes he can compete. He believes he's part of a team trying to go in the right direction. Then I guess Spurs have nothing to worry about. But as an Arsenal fan, I've definitely heard chat like this. And if you was a betting man, and definitely in an Arsenal fan's case, people, I potentially would want him to move, of course, because it'd be devastating. And for me, for Kane, if Kane seen as the flag bearer, yes, they've had other players who have left, like the Eriksens and stuff, and they've got other ballers in the team. Like Dele's not playing like it, but Dele, Son is definitely a baller. But for me, I think if Dele left, people will be like, oh, yeah, he shouldn't have left. If this guy leaves, be like, if Kane leaves, I think the players will really look around and go, boy, for Kane, Mr. Spurs to leave, nah, this ain't the thing to be at. Like, man, don't want to be here, sort of thing. And to be fair, you know, Spurs have had a terrible season, like Arsenal have had. But, you know, he probably thought he was going to have a good season because, you know, they probably questioned the ambition of the board. And at the end of the day, whether you agree with it or not, they spent 60 million on Ndombele. Now, he hasn't hit the ground running. But for me, definitely in the Spurs case, it's better than what would have been seen, people. You know, Kane in 20 games still has 11 goals and 2 assists. That just shows how good he is. If you didn't know how good he is. Anyways, I'm trying to see how actual... Yeah, so he's got another 4 years on his deal, really. So Spurs are in a great position. They've got someone like Levy who's difficult to negotiate. He's got 4 years left on his deal. He would have to force his hand. And I guess but Spurs fans might agree, might understand, but he'd have to potentially say, I want out of Spurs, come out publicly, potentially burn bridges with Spurs fans if he really wanted to leave, people. He's 27. Well, he's actually 27 this year, really, further highlighting the case. So he's got an interesting one to think about because at 30 years of age, you know, people would still buy Aubameyang, so people would still buy Kane if he keeps scoring goals, which I think he will. But he's got a lot to think about because a career is short. Because, yeah, you could be Mr. Spurs, Mr. Kane here for time and doing this. But what happens when he's 32, 33, 34 and he's a bit part player? And, people might say he's one of our own, but then he doesn't get a deal. What's the most he'll get? A handshake, a bit of testimonial, and that's it. It's on to the next guy. Because no one cares when your career's done. Yeah, there's many players at Arsenal and all of these things. Of course, I love Ian Wright. I love Thierry Henry, Dennis Bergkamp, Perez, all of these things. But once the career's done, it's done, people. Nobody cares. Like, no one cares. No one gives a crap, people. Once you're done, it's about that. How many legends have you seen? The same thing has happened to them, people. You might still be part of the team just because you're you. You get to be a person in the dressing room. But it's dead, man. It's dead. Like, it's dead. Why would you want that? Like, fair enough if you've won everything, or if it's like a United thing of many years ago where you're bullying the league, but it's dead, people. It don't make sense. Like, Kane's got a lot to think about. But all I would say, not that he watches Deluded or listens to me, God, he knows more than me. You just want to look back in your career, especially at the age now, and say, I have no regrets. It's all fun and games being Mr. Spurs. You might, I don't know if Spurs even do it in their new ground, but when I used to work there, you had Gary Mabbott and different lounges. You might have the Harry Kane lounge. You might get a testimonial. Your song might sing loud. But when you go home and stuff, and you look at your kids and you think, what legacy from a sporting wise have I left for them to aspire in their own goals? You look at, not that it necessarily means trophy cabinets, but you look at it, it's empty, people. For Bants, let's look at Harry Kane's honours. I know they probably ain't shit there, but let's see, people. Honours. Wrong one. Yeah, he's been a runner-up in the Champs. He's been a runner-up in the League Cup. Yeah, man, it's just it's just at Millwall, hella Young Player of the Year, Spurs Player of the Year, all of them things. Obviously, probably the thing of most, he's got OBE as well. The thing of most significance he's got in his career, and it's not to be downplayed, is being top goal scorer at the World Cup. We all know he potentially didn't back against the greatest of sides, but, you know, end of the day, how can you think that? How can you ever downplay that at all? So Kane's got a lot to think about, people, and I genuinely think he's going to cost, unless he forces his way out of that club, he's costing 100, 200 million, people, unless he forces his hand, because he's contracted for a number of years. You know, every year that he gets older, Spurs are going to get less money, but teams might leave him alone, sort of thing, because they might see, you know, you don't want to pay. Right now, 26 turning 27, 100, 200 million, it might be all right. At 28, 29, you might start having cold feet, sort of thing, people. You never know. So who knows, people. Moving away from all of that, though, people, we spent a long time on that. I'm sure you've all seen Benzema's comments. Now, I'm not going to read them all out, and he did kind of give praise to Giroud, but he said, well, he was kind of G'd up in relation to he's not finished on the international scene, but in relation to him and Giroud, he said, you don't compare Formula 1 with go-karting, and I'm being nice. Next, I know that I am Formula 1. And he did give praise to how Giroud works in the French side and he does his thing, but yeah, he's entitled to believe in himself. It works because he's there. That is the only reason. It won't be spectacular. He won't do something amazing, but he has his thing. Aside from that, does everyone like the way he plays? I don't know. Of course not. But at the end of the day, you know, Giroud seems like a humble person. He seems like a non-disruptive figure. At the end of the day, it's not Giroud's fault he's getting selected. He wants to go to the World Cup. In an ideal world, I wouldn't have called up Giroud, but my opinion isn't the one that matters, and that's what football's about. You know, Giroud, on the face of it, he had a terrible World Cup. There's no goals. You know, he didn't do anything. But if we remember it, his contribution, I'm not going to say it's up there with a couple of French players, but he is a team player. He's selfless. He did let everybody shine, sort of thing. Especially in a day and age where target men are utilised, but they're less and less. You know, it was a case of Giroud winning the flick-ons and it bringing Griezmann, etc. into play. So he does have something good. Of course, Benzema is twice the footballer Giroud is. Of course, potentially if Benzema, you know, things didn't happen and you were allowed to play international football, Giroud might not be a thing, people. It is a bit harsh on Giroud. And then you know what? Benzema's agreed to say what he wants. I agree with Benzema because he says facts. I do think, considering he's a fellow professional like you should have a bit more class towards him. He did praise him and say he does his thing. And I do, yeah, man, like, you are a better player but I can see why Giroud's there, really and truly. And to be fair, this is water off a duck's back for Giroud, in my opinion, because he's probably dealt with doubters his whole life. He actually came into the professional game late, and things like that. He had doubters at Arsenal, he still had doubters at Chelsea, and he's won titles at Chelsea. He's won the World Cup, he's won the League Cup in France, he's won a couple of FA Cups, sorry, I did win FA Youth Cup. He's definitely not as bad as some people make out, but he's definitely not good enough. But at the end of the day, he got called up by France. France won the World Cup. It is what it is. With the Euros being suspended for a year, I don't know if the Champs will call him up for 2021. Who knows? You'd imagine Giroud leaves Chelsea and goes to what league? I'm not sure. Will he get called up if he was to go MLS or something like that? I'm not too sure. But at his age, he's got to think about his pay packet now, really, if I'm completely honest with you guys. Finally, and I'm sure you're all seeing the latest measures, I've actually seen the Premier League are open to playing the matches in China because they're getting over their thing. But the latest plan is that players will have to play 2 to 3 times a week, or definitely in Arsenal's case, depending on the results you look at. But in short, clubs are preparing for a pre-season sort of thing so we can play games behind closed doors. Clubs are also preparing to have makeshift World Camp bases, I believe, to play games behind closed doors. So obviously, teams would be quarantined in whatever base. And you'd think, surely, even though that sounds like a good idea in principle, when you think about it, isn't it a bit dodgy? Because if you're going to, no matter what, even if you bring your own chefs and things like that, one, you still have to go from A to B, whether that's in a car, coach, or whatever, large group of people moving about, someone's bound to catch something. You're still going to have to, whether you got your own chefs or your own food, eventually you're going to have to go to the shop and buy something. You're still going to have to prepare something. You're going to have different physios. All it takes is for one person to touch something and everyone's gone. So there's still a lot of contact. You're going to have security because, people are banned on the streets, but they're still going to try and salute the team. So there's a lot, there's a lot to think about, regardless of if training facilities and stadiums and hotels undergo deep cleans. Of course, if in principle, and I agree with it, playing games behind closed doors, whether I don't want that, it's not a bad shout. It's better than no football. But what happens if a player breaks their leg? Imagine the NHS, which are already underfunded and severely stressed right now and having to perform miracles. Do they need that again? I'm not saying 1 million players are going to break their legs, but what happens if a player breaks his leg? Do you then section off some private hospital and potentially denying treatment to people dealing with the corona thing or more serious things? What happens if he breaks his leg? You're going to put more stress on people. You then put this individual who, he might get his leg fixed, but going to the hospital, he's contracted the corona thing or whatever, people. So it's a difficult one. You're still going to need, if you're going to stream it, you're still going to need the TV people around. Potentially, I don't know if the pundits are going to, you'd imagine if there's no fans, there's got to be pundits to at least keep some sort of entertainment. So the pundits are going to be mingling together, people. All it takes is the pundit to get in a taxi, not wash his hands, pass it on. So it's a difficult one, people. As you lot know, we're aiming to finish the season by mid-July and we're trying to get this started in June. Apparently, fans might not even be allowed back in games until October, people. Apparently, players are warming to the idea of such, depending on who you read, because apparently some players don't want to do this, some players do. It is what it is. Apparently, like I said, the games are likely to be condensed. I guess this raises... players would need to have a pre-season because they're off, they're not playing and competing as much. But I'd say it's a bit dangerous. And again, there'd be a gap for training and stuff, but playing so many games in such a particular period of time, in a short period of time particularly, it does, for me, increase the risk of injuries. And what happens then? Especially, imagine, the contracts get sorted, but you're playing in these games behind closed doors. As a result of fatiguing or not being in your physical peak fitness, you pull your hamstring or you pull a ligament that makes you out for 6 to 8 months. And considering your contract is up this year, what happens then? Do you get it? What happens then? It's a difficult one, really and truly. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see what happens, people. You have to just think about the added stress it puts on people, and I think the big part of that is going to be how we recover as a society. Because if we're still stressing the NHS and whatnot, then it probably wouldn't be responsible to do this purely because of the ifs and buts. Now, ifs and buts are not facts, but you get the point in that regards. On that note, though, I'm going to keep it moving. I've got nothing more to say or add. People, deluded. I'm out. Thank you for watching and rocking.